Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Going Bush, the program about our forests and the people who work in them. Yes, we've got a big show coming up for you in this, the International Year of the Forest. Here's a look at what's coming up.
Fire and our forests. Has forestry's ways of thinking changed since those tragic Victorian fires 3 years ago?
The story of Blackwood, it makes up an important part of the industry and now the code has been cracked to grow it more efficiently.
And Australia's newest adventure hub, Maydena, now tapping into the corporate market. All this plus your chance to win tickets to Tasmania's adventure forests.
Devastating and destructive, the Black Saturday fires which ripped through Victoria in February 2009 was Australia's most deadly bushfire, taking 173 lives and destroying more than 1,800 homes.
The most deadly of the blazes was around the Kinglake area in Victoria. Today, a drive through the mountain ash forests nearby demonstrates just how big the blaze was. It's burnt out for as far as the eye can see.
This is high-value sawlog country and as such, Vic Forest staff and forest contractors were in the thick of the action from the start.
Our role sort of initially for the fire was to try and contain or protect sort of property and that, given how large the fire was at the time in the initial sort of stages. Then it moved back to sort of containment of the larger fires, building large breaks around townships, protecting sort of assets, and then sort of even larger sort of fallback lines where they undertook larger backburns off. So yeah, the contractors were there with their gear and equipment working alongside DSE and CFA for that sort of work.
I was on the DSE fire crew. So we basically, on the day, because it was predicted to be so bad, we all started off in the yard and basically just waiting around for a call to go out, and we got that at about 11:30 and headed over to Kilmore, which is northeast of Melbourne. And pretty much just followed the fire from there over the next few weeks.
The tragedy of loss of lives and property was overwhelming, but the big challenge for crews on the ground continued for weeks after the initial blaze. Extinguishing the massive fires took more than a month and required a united effort to achieve.
Virtually when the Black Saturday fires started, our operations ceased as such, and all our staff that were committed there, up to sort of 100 of our staff were involved with the firefight, either directly on the line or also coordinating in incident control centres and that as well. So yeah, and that sort of virtually for us, it stopped our business for a month there to concentrate on fighting the fire, and then for us to work back into the harvesting of those areas.
While the firefight took weeks, it was forestry contractors who stepped up to provide much needed help. All of their heavy machinery, including excavators, skidders and dozers, were made available to the different agencies involved in fighting the blaze.
A cracking example, Black Saturday, we had in the Talangi yard, after that weekend, a lot of the contractors brought their machines out of the bush or went and collected them after the fire, brought them into that central location, and we had the play of those machines for the next few weeks in terms of use of rounding up the fire. Everything from dozers, skidders, harvesters and excavators were put to use as we saw fit, and really we couldn't have put the fire out without them.
The benefit of using contractors isn't just their machinery. Most are skilled in firefighting and all want to work hard to protect as much of the forest as they can, given it's their livelihood.
A lot of the contractors that we used in this Black Range area were actually working this area at the time. So you know, this is their workplace as well as ours. So we were getting these guys in with a great fire experience and bush knowledge, but also know the local area and know the tracks, know the type of terrain, and they know the fire behaviour that they can expect from this sort of bush.
Forest contractors also have to be careful not to add to the threat of fire in extreme conditions, often downing tools if the weather is too hot.
We've got Some big forecasts coming up, hot weather and extreme weather. We usually don't work in those conditions. The forestry usually want us out of here, so just so we don't cause any drama as well.
Vic Forests are working closely to make sure everybody in the forest knows the risks and are well informed of what's going on.
Yeah, Chris. There you
Dave,
go.
how are you going?
Good, thanks. Yeah, Chris, just follow up that fire equipment and that for the year. Just checking you've got the gear and that. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. It's yeah, all the machines have got a fire extinguisher each.
Yep.
There's a Rayco in the trailer. We've got our 400 litres of water and firefighting pump and hose.
Wildfire in these forests is nothing new. This is an old dugout, a concrete sort of bunker for the foresters of yesteryear to escape if a blaze broke out. You've got to remember that eucalypt forests are made to burn. After the break, a look at Tasmania's response to the Black Saturday fires, and still to come, it's fine dining in Maydena, Australia's newest and most unique place to eat lunch. As devastating as the Black Saturday fires in Victoria were, Nick, it's important that they can happen again and they can happen anywhere.
The key thing, Andrew, is the lessons learned from those fires and how we can change the way we interact with the forest in the future. Tasmania has been prone to bushfires for many years. Dry summers and hot northerly winds can wreak havoc around the state.
The vegetation is very similar, the fire situation is very similar. Not many people now would remember the big fires in southeast Tasmania in 1967. There were 73 people killed. There were 173 killed in Victoria on the 7th of February, but the fires were comparable in scale. A smaller version of what happened in Victoria happened here at St Mary's, down on the coast to Scamander, where 20 houses were lost. Fortunately, nobody was killed there. But those fires, very similar to what have happened in Victoria or in South Australia, could happen here in any summer.
Almost every Forestry Tasmania employee is trained in the skills of firefighting. In the off-season, they spend their time at field days, such as this one, learning new techniques and carrying out various tests. And that testing includes a physical one. You've got to do 6 laps of the footy oval, or 3.2 kilometres, in under half an hour, carrying 12 kilos on your back.
It's actually a test that has been used universally over Australia with all the most firefighting services. This is a moderate test. There is another test, a more extreme test after this.
And that's why you have to maintain that level of fitness and why they practice this in the off-season, because when a bushfire breaks out, inevitably it's not on a nice flat footy oval, it's in somewhere like this, big steep hills, and you've got to be fit to get around.
Certainly Tasmania Fire Service is the lead agency and has far and away the greatest number of people by drawing on their volunteers. Forestry Tasmania would have between 200 and 250 fully trained firefighters that we could send out if we had to.
Also on the front line of protecting Tasmania's forests is a network of fire towers set up to give a bird's eye view of forestry land. Fire tower operators spending 7 days a week all summer alone up the tower waiting to spot smoke.
So your fire tower operator's job is to look for small plumes of smoke, Nick, which then grow into big fires. And even today, it's not fire season, but we can spot half a dozen or so fires around the place.
And from what seems outwardly is a bit of an arcane method of spotting fires, they do still say that this is the best way possible to do the job.
That's when the excitement starts. Well, the first thing we do is we take a bearing on the fire. I call up the other towers and see if they can spot it, and if they spot it, they take bearings on it too. And we work out a grid reference between us to make sure we've got it in the right spot, and then we call it into forestry base. and they take it from there. Scottsdale base from Mount Horror.
Good day, go ahead.
With the training of forestry personnel complete and with a network of fire spotters, Forestry Tasmania also carries out fuel reduction burns in hope that if and when a big fire comes, it won't have the fuel it needs to turn life-threatening.
The third big ticket item, I guess, is the need to increase the amount of fuel reduction burning that gets done both in state forest and across the state generally. And that's both on government lands and private land. The Victorian Royal Commission primarily addressed government lands, and they suggested to the government that they should be setting a target of about 5% of government land burnt each year. It's more important, in my view, to concentrate on strategic locations of your burning and the quality of the work you're doing rather than just a basic area figure.
Fire in our eucalypt forests is a very real danger, as demonstrated on Black Saturday when 173 people lost their lives.
In Victoria, Vic Forests continue to maintain close working relationships with forest contractors to keep them updated on conditions and to ensure their machinery is fitted with appropriate fire safety tools.
Fuel reduction burns are held in spring and autumn each year to minimise the risks and impacts of wildfires. Still to come on Going Bush, the story of one of Australia's iconic special species timbers and a truly unique dining experience.
All right, throughout each episode of Going Bush, we're giving you the chance to experience Tasmania's newest forest experience, the Tahoon Airwalk Lodge. And at the end of the series, you could win a fantastic major prize thanks to Forestry Tasmania and Innkeepers.
Each week, one lucky winner will win a night's accommodation at the Airwalk Lodge for a family of 4, including free entry to experience the iconic Tahoon Airwalk.
And at the end of the series, one lucky winner will win the ultimate Tasmanian adventure holiday, including family passes to all of Forestry Tasmania's adventure forest sites and accommodation at Innkeeper Properties, Quest Launceston, Tall Timbers and Quest Trinity House.
All you need to do is write down this week's forest code word and enter via the FT website at www.forestrytas.com.au.
Welcome back to the show. We find ourselves deep in the northwestern rainforests, Nick, and this is a prime example of a Tasmanian blackwood.
One of the biggest blackwoods anywhere on earth.
Yes.
Hardy, 95 centimetres in diameter,
Yes.
which, depending on what you want to use it for, is either very, very good or not so good, because the blackwood is one of the state's most important commercial species.
The Blackwood family extends as far up the east coast of Australia as Cairns, but it's in the southeast of the country, particularly in northwestern Tasmania, where some of the biggest blackwoods on earth can be found.
Where we are at the moment, we're in riverine rainforest. It also occurs as an understory species in eucalypt forest, and there's also extensive blackwood swamps throughout northwestern Tasmania.
Every year, each blackwood tree drops thousands of seeds, but for them to strike, a disturbance needs to occur. A fire, a flood, or something as small as a tiny animal burrowing its way to the surface is all that's required.
Stu, one of the other interesting things about blackwood is that it's got a few sort of germination tricks, this being one of them.
Yeah, Nick. There's little crayfish that live below the surface, and as they bring the soil up with them,
Blackwood seeds in there?
blackwood seeds will be in there, and as it warms up, they'll start to germinate.
That's pretty good. And floods, I understand?
Yeah, when the Arthur River comes up, this area will flood again, soil disturbance, or when a tree blows over with a root ball, again, the soil disturbance.
Tasmania's use for blackwood started shortly after European settlement. The timber itself is durable. These large blackwoods that stand straight are perfect saw logs. Mills like Britton Brothers in Smithton turning them into a variety of different products, including floorboards and veneer.
So, Sean, this timber, tell us the story of this.
Well, the logs that this timber came from our local Blackwood swamp resource.
Yep.
That's the same resource that we've been logging now for about 103 years. And the resource forestry organised the harvesting out of the bush, and we buy the logs at the mill gate. They get delivered on the truck, we unload them, we cut them in our mill, We cut each log to maximise the value, to cut the best sizes and most valuable pieces of timber out of each log.
When it comes to growing Blackwood, there are a couple of issues Forestry Tasmania face.
It's easy to grow, but it's hard to grow well. Everything eats it, wallabies and particularly wallabies eat it when it's young, but also we have trouble growing it tall and straight. Blackwood doesn't have very good apical dominance, which means it doesn't grow up nice and pointy like a pine tree or a eucalypt. Given a chance, it bushes out. So you need something to help it grow up tall and straight, and that means competition from sidelight.
That competition is from smaller shrubs such as paperbark or pomaderus, which cut off the sunlight around the young Blackwoods, meaning they can't branch out from an early age. So after 80 years or so, you're left with tall, straight trees ready to be milled.
Tasmanian Blackwood is the cornerstone behind our operation. It has been since the company was started 103 years ago in the Blackwood swamps just outside of Smithton. And today it makes up probably about 40% of our production, but probably about 50 to 60% of our turnover.
And as for keeping the animals out that like to eat little Blackwoods, it's simply a matter of building a fence. But we should remember that it's not just saw logs that everybody in the community are after. The old branched out Blackwoods are perfect for creating some of the finer things in life.
I inhabit a really sort of boutique part of the process of Blackwood or forestry, and it's all about taking that extra care and looking for those particular pieces. So I think there'll always be timber available for me.
And it's in boutique furniture makers' workshops like this one, Nick, that Tassie Blackwood really comes into its own.
Its grain, its sort of colour and its durability make it one of the most sought after timbers in the state.
It's a really good general furniture timber. It'll cope with wear and tear really well. It's not as soft as a Huon pine, but it's not as dense as a myrtle, but it's in between, and it's got that lovely warm tone of brown, which it's nice to live with.
So whether it's fine furniture makers or larger Tasmanian sawmills, Blackwood is an integral part of forestry in the state. The new growing regime using fences to keep out game is being hugely successful, meaning there will be saw logs for decades to come.
While Island Specialty Timbers are training more and more logging contractors to bring in trees which craftsmen can turn into a work of art. Stay with us. After the break, it's off to the adventure capital of Tasmania, Maydena.
All right, time to check out some of the things you can do in our state forests, and it brings us to Maydena, Nick, a little town in the Derwent Valley around about an hour from Hobart.
It is an adventure hub,
Yes, it
Hardy.
is.
Maydena is the centre of attraction in this area.
Heaps
There
to
are
do.
a number of things you can do. One of those things is fishing.
Yes, this is a local. That is Scott, and he's going to catch us a fish.
Good.
Go on yet? Surrounded by mountains stretching all the way into the southwest wilderness and forests such as the Styx and Florentine, Maydena is a spectacular town, a town which has been sleepy for decades after a forestry boom several generations ago. Sleepy until now, because thanks to several tourism operators, Maydena is now the adventure capital of Tasmania. All right, so this is Scott, our fisherman for the day. Scott, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Andrew.
You're a Maydena local.
Yes, I am. Grew up here in my early days. Great place to grow up.
The town's got a bit of an interesting story about it.
Yeah, it's a logging town from Australian newsprint mills day, so it was all revolved around logging and harvesting around in the Florentine Valley and sort of Styx valleys and the surrounding areas. Yeah.
And there's still a bit of forestry that goes on, but these days Maydena is known as the adventure hub.
That's right, Andrew. It was a great place to grow up, and there's always something to do. And now, particularly with forestry's the hub that they've put here, it's plenty to do.
And mate, one of those things is fishing. So come on, get to it. Catch us a fish. You need to catch us lunch, mate.
I'll try, Andrew.
There's also plenty of other stuff to do.
As well as fishing, there are four-wheel driving tours taking the many forestry roads around the area, a rifle and clay target shooting range, archery, all-terrain vehicles, plenty of hiking trails, Australia's only rail riders which put in use the old train tracks, and plenty more activities which can all be booked from the Adventure Hub on Main Street.
And of course those tri-sleds. Whoa! But that's too hard. Now we're going to get in this, which is the Ocker bus.
So with Scott finally managing to catch, or at least buy a fish, we boarded the Ocker bus and headed for one of the most unique lunch spots in the world. By the time we arrived, it was snowing.
All right, so this is Eagles Eyrie, Nick. It's a function centre.
There is nothing like this anywhere else in the world. It's a viewing platform. They have cooking schools.
Yes.
There is a function going on as we speak.
A gourmet one. We've brought lunch. I've got loaves.
And fishes. With local corporate types waiting to eat, inside the kitchen is all go. Renowned local chef Waji and his crew are cooking madly for lunch, which was made up entirely of Tasmanian foods and wines. As it turned out, we arrived a bit late to provide fish for everyone. The beef was already cooked.
There would be nowhere in Tasmania like this at all, because to have a place, can't even walk around it, and it is literally on top of the mountain. It's not something else around it, is there? Like, it's not on a shelf or anything, it's purely on top. And it's brilliant for bringing a group of people to pure surprise, pure open their eyes, because you can't see it from anywhere else till you get to that front decking.
The Eagles Eyrie certainly does surprise. Today the snow showers pass every 15 minutes or so, allowing just a glimpse of the view. But on a clear day, you can see for miles.
The idea of the Eagles Eyrie, and indeed Maydena, is to offer an experience to small groups of travellers. It's more about the experience than mass numbers of tourists.
I think the point of difference that Maydena will offer is that we won't be doing corporate bonding sessions where you have a whiteboard and the boss is up the front explaining to people what they should be doing. Ours is really about bonding. It's about giving the staff an experience they'll never forget. It's about doing the bonding activities like taking the rail rider, enjoying some skeet shooting and getting up into an environment which encourages reflection and thought.
The sky's the limit, really. It's a venue with the difference. It's available for private hire. It can be anything from corporate boardroom meetings, day conferencing, through to someone's 21st birthday. We've got some events planned. So, yeah, all things to all people.
Maydena Adventure Hub is a Forestry Tasmania initiative which partners with local tourism operators, offering something for the whole family. A full list of activities can be found at www.adventureforests.com.au.
The Eagles Eyrie is available for private or corporate functions. It has a fully commercial kitchen and can cater for as many as 100 guests.
While Waji Catering will also be running some cooking schools based at the Eyrie, featuring Tasmanian food and wine. Again, to find out more, visit adventureforests.com.au.
That's all we've got time for in this episode of Going Bush, Nick.
But we have more at the same place, same time next week, and here's a look at what's coming up. Lonely trees, a new way to grow higher quality timber from plantations.
A carbon breath test for the soil, and getting bogged with friends. An unlikely win-win for the environment and four-wheel drive nuts.
That's next time on Going Bush.